My name's Renata. Welcome to my YouTube channel, which is dedicated to three categories: intercultural communication and expat life, business skills and job search across cultures, and foreign language learning. This video is part of category number 2, business skills and job search across cultures. This one specifically about how to master job search in Germany. Why Germany? Well, this is where my life basically started. I lived and worked in Germany and in different European countries for the vast majority of my life, and I've lived in the United States for the past 15 plus years. So I make a lot of videos about intercultural communication, especially Germany, the US, or European countries versus the US, because these are the cultures I know the best. I often have clients and students I help about living and working or studying abroad. So very often the topic comes up about moving to the US versus moving to Germany or Europe. And so I already have a video you may want to check out about a job search in the US. But this one is specifically dedicated to job search in Germany. So maybe you've been thinking, oh, I would like to live and work there. Is it possible? Where do I start? Do I actually need to speak German? Are there any legal requirements? Tell me more. And so I thought, okay, I'll make a video just giving you a very, very basic overview of what you might need to know to consider whether you want to move to Germany, live and work in Germany. And if you want to know more, or if you need a teacher, trainer, coach, someone to work with you, help you with the relocation, maybe translate some documents, create a resume in German for you, and other things like that, reach out to me. I'll be happy to help. And you'll see me again at the end of this video if you want to know more. For now, I'm going to share my screen as always, and I'm going to talk you through a couple of very basic things you need to know if you were thinking of moving to Germany or living and working in Germany. Are you ready? Here we go. So this video is about how to master job search in Germany, and here are some topics we're going to cover in this video. First of all, where to look for jobs, what are some obvious and maybe not so obvious places. Then a little bit about the legal and the language requirements. I'll spend a little bit more time on the German resume. The German word for that is Lebenslauf. Then the interview, the German word for that is Vorstellungsgespräch, and how to present yourself, not only for the interview, but in general, leading into our last topic, a little bit of a German culture 101 for working in Germany. Just a bit of an overview to round up this video. So let's get started with where to look for jobs. Well, the obvious place might be online. The typical job sites for Germany are Stepstone, Monster, Job Scout 24, Job Pilot, or Horizont Job. There are others too, but these are probably the most common ones, and they're great to have a look around, see what's available, getting ideas, maybe even of job titles. What is the job title in German? What am I actually looking for? So checking out those postings online, those websites might be a good first step. But don't forget to check out newspapers, especially when you are already in Germany. So if you go there to just stay for a little while, or if you already living there, get a newspaper, but get the weekend edition. Newspaper is still a thing. During the week, Monday through Friday, you won't find much, but the weekend edition is much thicker. It's probably double the size, and you'll still get a lot of very interesting job ads in the newspaper, especially the regional newspapers that are for an entire section of Germany and not just a city. So don't think the newspaper is outdated. It's still a thing. Of course, if you want to have a presence online, you should have a very good LinkedIn profile. Make sure the open to work tag is on. And if you think LinkedIn is international, yes, it is. People do look at LinkedIn profiles in Germany, but there's also something called Xing, which is particularly important for Germany. So if you're really interested in working in Germany, you should also have a Xing profile in addition to your LinkedIn profile. Of course, you can try to contact companies directly, and I always recommend it. I highly recommend it. Don't wait for the job posting to appear online and then apply. Reach out actively to companies or look at company pages. They have career pages. They may have a job advertised on their own career page that you won't find in the newspaper or on one of the online job postings. You can also contact a company directly. You really want to work for them. You really think that's the company for you. And you can reach out to them. You can just send them a message and say, um, what would I have to do to work in this particular field? Would you be open to telling me more about the qualifications of people in this and that job or that field? Like informational interviews. You're reaching out to get information from them, but you're really just reaching out to introduce yourself. Sometimes you can also send a direct application to them, which is called Initiativbewerbung. So don't be shy. Sometimes this is the much better option than waiting for the right job posting to appear. And don't forget to network. Network online, network in person if you're there, meeting people, meeting the right decision maker. That is always a very, very important recommendation. And if you just want to know some general things about the labor market in Germany, what's important, I can highly recommend to visit the website of the German Federal Employment Agency called Arbeitsagentur. It's not exactly great as a job board, even though they do have one and you can check it out. But for as far as information is concerned about living and working in Germany, everything you need to know about the German labor market, well, then that's your number one website to go to. So the Arbeitsagentur, you can find it on that website. There is an English version, and there's another longer link you can check out. And you'll find interesting things even about learning German, um, other topics such as recognition of qualifications. That's very important. Seasonal work, maybe, or what you need to know about the admission to the German labor market. So there's lots of interesting information there, and you should definitely check it out if you're at the beginning of your job search journey. There are other pages as well about financial support, education in Germany, social insurance, starting a business, and many other interesting topics. Like I just said, they have a job board. And yes, of course, you can check that out as well. However, the job board requires some German skills. There are industries listed here by German name: Land- und Forstwirtschaft, Gartenbau, Fertigung, Fertigungstechnik, Sicherheit und Militär, Reinigung, Handel, Gesundheit, and so on. So also looking for a particular job in a particular area, you would need to know at least some German to maneuver that job board. Also, you may want to consider having a look at the European version of a job seeker website called EURES, European Employment Services. So this is for the entire European Union, and you can even create something called the Europass. Maybe you don't want to limit your job search to Germany. If you speak German and that's why you were considering Germany, well, you may as well consider Austria or the German-speaking part of Switzerland. You may also consider international jobs with international companies in other European countries. So just widen the scope of your search and do consider this EU website as well. Let's talk about some legal and language requirements. I'm not an immigration attorney and I will not give you any legal advice, but I will talk to you about some basic things you should consider. And of course, I want to tell you where to find very good information about that. You should definitely visit the German missions in the United States, for example, website or any other website of the consular services of Germany. www.germany.info. That's usually where you can find those consular services, and you'll find plenty of information about employment in Germany, all that background information you need to know before starting your journey. In general, if you want to live and work in Germany, you need to be either a German or European citizen. So if you're watching this video and you're from a EU member state, you don't need a visa. You can just move to Germany, live and work there. If you're EU citizen, that's it. If you're not, well, then you need some sort of work visa. That's what the website I just showed you is pretty good about, to give you general information. Maybe you can get a residence permit. That's another option. It's something that requires good German language skills. You need proficiency level B1 for that. Alternatively, you might consider a so-called blue card. It's for highly skilled workers. So Google the Germany or EU blue card and see what the requirements are. Which are the professions, which are the skills the EU is looking for that could get you a blue card? That's just another option. Or you may have a settlement permit. That's something permanent that allows you to live and work in Germany. But in general, if you have any specific questions about the legal requirements, I highly recommend that you talk to an immigration attorney. I will not give any legal advice on this video, so please talk to a professional or check out the websites I just showed you. In addition to that, I would always highly recommend that you speak at least some German. Don't expect to be able to go there with no German at all and not encounter any problems. The proficiency levels vary. For example, for a certain permit, a certain residence permit, you may need something like a B1. That's sort of a intermediate level. Level B1, B2, you'd be able to do most things in German, understand most things, interact with others, study or work in the German language, but you would still make mistakes. People would know you're not a native speaker, but it would be very sufficient for living and working or living and studying there. C1 is an extremely high level, and a C2 is a native speaker. And then the first two proficiency levels, A1 and A2, are considered beginner levels. Sometimes it's enough to show that you have at least a basic understanding of the German language, like A1, or you have the basic capacity to communicate, that would be A2. But sometimes they may actually need you to be a B1 or B2, so watch out for these proficiency levels and see what is necessary for the type of job or the type of industry that you're interested in. And that's all I'm going to say about legal and language requirements. I just want to draw your attention to one more possibility to move to Germany and to look for a job there. It's the so-called Opportunity Card, or in German, Chancenkarte. That means if you apply for it, you fulfill the requirements, you can move to Germany for a total of 12 months or up to 12 months. During that period of time, you can look for employment in Germany. So it allows you to be there and look for employment. And if you manage to find employment within that period of time, you can change your status, your immigration status, to another type of work visa. But at least this is an opportunity to go there in person and be there and look for employment. Very often, if you still live abroad and you apply for a job in Germany and they see that you still live thousands of miles or hundreds of miles away, they will not consider you. But if they see a German address and you're already living there and you can go there in person for an interview, well, that will certainly increase your chances. So if you come to a point where you're very serious about this, you may want to consider one of those opportunity cards. All right, let's move on to the German resume called Lebenslauf. So at some point in your journey, you will need one of those. It's very likely that it's different from what you're used to in your home country. And since that might be any country on this planet, I can't really compare, but very often I compare the German and the US American resume because there are some severe differences. And as we go through this, you'll notice how different it is. But before we look at the actual resume, let's look at some things to consider before you get started. The main question is, am I going to write my resume in German or in English? What if I don't actually speak German? Should I still hire a translator or make sure I have a German version of my resume? Send the German resume, even though I don't speak German. Is that advisable? Or should I do it in English? Would they actually accept it? Well, that's a very good question and very much matters what job you're applying for. I would always go by the language of the job ad, no matter whether you find it in a newspaper or online or on LinkedIn or Xing. Have a look at the language. Is the job ad in German or is it in English? If they put it out there in English, they are actually addressing a more international uh, crowd of applicants. Sometimes German companies want to make sure they hire someone who actually speaks good English, and then they would require you to apply for the job in English. Now, that could be an advantage for you. You wouldn't have to do it in German, but if you're looking to work for, let's say, a more local business and they're appealing more to local residents or people living in the area, and the job ad was in German, you probably should do it in German, and it's probably expected that you do speak German at least at a basic to intermediate level. You could always reach out to the company, remember, and ask, what is the expectation? Would it make sense for you? And so on. So social media is often a great place to reach out to someone in HR or somebody working there, trying to find out what the expectation is. But that's the first question, German or English? Which of the two languages will get you the attention you're looking for? Like I said, it could be a local traditional company or more international company that's looking for more of a US format. That's what you want to find out. Also, it very much depends on the industry, the type of job, the seniority level of the position, the circumstances. So you really want to think about the design, the colors, the font, the template, the length. You really want to sit down with somebody who's experienced in resume writing, who knows how to design it, how to rate it, how to make sure that the algorithms scanning it, the applicant tracking system, the ATS, that you get past that first hurdle. Um, you really want to talk to someone what recommendations they have for the type of job you want to apply for. In any case, you should always tailor the resume to the company or the job you're applying for. Stay away from these cookie cutter resumes. One fits all usually doesn't do the job. Now, looking at the actual resume, what goes on your list? How do you start? So in a German resume, you start with personal information. Your headline could be zur Person. In that section, you put your full name, your postal address. This is where they see where you live. And believe me, if you live outside Germany, they will not consider you. Or at least they will not consider you if the job ad was in German, because then it's obviously addressing local residents who speak German. If it's an international kind of job and they invite you to send the resume in English, they might actually consider people not living in Germany, but the postal address is always a giveaway. The system might sort you out. You might not be considered just because you don't live in Germany. That's why this opportunity card is such a great opportunity. That's why it's called the opportunity card to go there, live there, and have a German address, and then apply for jobs while you're there. You also need your phone number, your email address, and of course your LinkedIn or your Xing handle so they can look you up on social media. Maybe you have other social media or websites. It very much depends on the job, the business you're in. Is it actually relevant? Do people in your industry have their own website? What is your social media presence? If it's only for personal use, let's say, if it's your private life, don't put it on your resume. But if it's in any way relevant to the position that you're applying, or this is a place, a website where you showcase some of your work, then that should definitely go on your resume. Yes, surprise, surprise. On a German resume, you write your date and place of birth. Yes, they do want to know, and it's a common thing to do. Also, some people might write their marital status, whether they have kids, because that tells the possible employer about their tax category, which is called Steuerklasse. You don't have to, but it's common. Some people still do it. But if you don't even have a tax category and if you don't want to talk about it, just leave it. I'm just saying you might see people do that on their resume. And another surprise, surprise, I guess, you need to have a photograph, a professional profile photo. And of course, it needs to be job appropriate. And that also depends on the industry, where you want to work, your level of seniority and all that. But this is what is expected to be found on a German resume. In the first part, about personal information. Once you got that, you should list the angestrebte Position. So you should say what you're actually applying for, because this kind of tells people that this is not a cookie cutter, one fits all sort of resume. You're specifically naming the position you're applying for, or if there are any particularities, like it's part-time or if it's an internship, mention that this is what you're specifically looking for. Bildungsweg, meaning education or path of education. Yes, of course, you should list your high school, your college, your university, any other noteworthy formal education, followed by Berufspraxis, Berufserfahrung, your work experience. But it might also be the other way round. You might mention the work experience first and then the education after that. It just depends on how much of work experience you have. So let's say you're fresh out of university, you have more formal education than actual work experience, then lead with your education. Put education in number 3 and work experience in number 4. But if it's the other way around, if you're a seasoned professional, you have a lot of work experience, you should put the work experience before the education and put the education at the very end. It very much depends. And also, as far as work experience goes, the more work experience you have, the more you're probably inclined to put all of it on your resume. But make sure you only put what is relevant. Not every little detail needs to be there. What is the most relevant work experience for the position you're applying for? You want to lead with that. You want to point that out. You want to have a more detailed description of that work experience that is relevant for the job, and just very briefly mention other work experience that is maybe not so relevant. It's very important that you get that right. Also, when you describe what you did in each of the jobs and each of your work experiences, focus on tasks and not on achievements. That's probably one of the biggest differences between a German and a US American resume. The next point on your resume should be Weiterbildung Sonstiges, which is professional development or miscellaneous. And you can put anything like courses and certificates or whatever is noteworthy that is relevant to your professional development or any other skills that you have. If you have language and intercultural skills, that's the section where you would mention that, including your proficiency level. Also, if you have attended any international exchange programs, if you have lived and worked or studied abroad, any of these experiences should be mentioned. Also, if you have any leadership or entrepreneurial skills, and so on. And maybe that's also a surprise. You would always date and sign a resume. It doesn't have to be hand signed. If it's online, if it's an electronic document, it could be just written in the document, but you have to put the date and the signature. Once again, that shows you this is a specific resume dated at this particular day and time to apply for this particular job. That would leave the best impression. All right, let's talk about the interview, das Vorstellungsgespräch. Here are a couple of things you need to bear in mind. Be punctual and look professional. I know it goes without saying. I didn't have to mention that, but I think I should, because like in many places around the world, that is very important. So let's start with that. Also memorize your resume. So if you have to look at it and read from it, oh, let me see, what did I do after that? Oh, I don't remember how long. Oh, yeah. If you have to look at your resume like that, your hiring manager or recruiter will not be impressed. Also prepare for questions. You should know everything about your own education, about your own career path. You should be able to explain what you did and why, what type of professional experience you have. They will quiz you about that. So be really well prepared to answer those questions that should be the easy questions. There will be more difficult questions later, the behavioral questions and all that, but at least the easy question, make sure you know everything and you can explain it well. That will give you confidence as you move on with the interview. As the interview moves on, they will, of course, ask you what specific qualifications and experience you have that make you the ideal candidate for the job. So how does that match the job requirements? Why you? Why are you the best person for the job? You need to think about what you want to answer, how you want to prove, like what evidence you have that you're the one who's best for this particular type of position. And as you're doing that, make sure you do not do the hard sell. The hard sell does not work in Germany. It does work in the US. So since I'm always comparing these two countries, let me tell you, if you're as American, you're moving to Germany, do not ever do the hard sell. Focus on facts, be precise, give precise answers, have good answers to the questions, be realistic and confident, but not overconfident, and don't do the hard sell. Also prepare these real life examples. They will ask you some behavioral questions. The best way to do that is the STAR method. I discussed it in my other video about mastering interviews in the US, but some of those things are very applicable to interviews around the world. So have those real life examples that can really help you. And be prepared to also talk about immigration and language skills. They will ask you, are you allowed to live and work in this country? What type of visa do you need? Do you already have some sort of permit? What are your language skills? This job requires some German language skills. Are you willing to learn it? By when do you expect to have which level? So expect to be asked about these things. Also be proactive and self-confident, but to a degree that it's still realistic and factual. That's the most desirable type of behavior they want to see. Also prepare for questions you want to ask. I can't mention enough. It doesn't matter which country, that if you go in and you sit there like a police interrogation and you just answer their questions, and when they say, do you have any questions for us? And you say, no, I don't, then that's a really, really bad sign. You should have some questions yourself that you want to ask, and you should proactively ask for the next steps. Like, what happens next? By when are you going to contact me? How many other candidates are you going to interview, and so on and so forth. So you should really prepare some proactive questions that you're going to ask. Of course, you shouldn't lie, or you shouldn't be evasive, like, oh, I don't want to really answer that. Don't tiptoe around it. You should definitely be honest and specific. having just said don't lie, there are exceptions I have to mention. You have to know which questions are legal and which questions are not. Okay, that may sound strange, but sometimes in an interview, the interviewer may ask you things they shouldn't be asking you. So, according to German employment law, if you're asked an illegal question, something the employer or the recruiter shouldn't be asking, then you may lie to protect yourself from discrimination. So really ask around or read the necessary information online. Get someone who knows these type of things and make sure you know what's a legal and what's an illegal question. Legal questions might be about your nationality, your immigration status, your education, previous employers, skills, and so on. Anything that the company might have a legitimate interest in, which in German is called ein berechtigtes Interesse. It may seem like, well, they shouldn't be asking me that, but it's really a legitimate question for that particular position or the industry, then yes, they're allowed to ask, like a background check or these type of things. But here are some examples for what are illegal questions. They can't ask you about your health, like, do you have underlying health conditions? You don't have to answer, just say no. So you can lie because you're protected by law. They shouldn't have asked you that. Your relationships, your sexual orientation, your political views, or maybe even criminal history. It very much depends on the job. They have to let you know if they require a background check. And if there's something like an official background check, yes, then they can ask for that. But there's a limit to what they can ask, and so it's always good to know what is okay and what is not. All right, let's move on to our last chapter here, kind of a bit of a German culture 101 for working in Germany. I could talk the entire day about German culture or intercultural communication, and there are a lot of other videos on my YouTube channel if that interests you in general. But I just wanted to put together a few points since you're thinking of applying for a job in Germany. What are some major cultural features you should be aware about? And I thought I'd start with a quiz about German values in the German language. So if you already speak German, you can guess. Recht und Ordnung. Give you a few seconds to think. Yes, it means law and order. It is a value. It is very important to follow the law. Law and order is just such an important value. You shouldn't be the one suggesting to bend the rules or to ask others to have understanding for not following the rules. So Recht und Ordnung is something you will hear over and over again. Pünktlichkeit. Yes, you may have guessed it. Punctuality. Yes, be on time. Yes, I do hear that from a lot of people. Why do you still say that Germans love punctuality when the trains are always late and these type of things? Sure, that's true. And believe me, even German citizens and people who've lived there their entire lives get upset about trains being late or other things being late. But in general, it's something people aspire to. Let's put it that way. Value is something you aspire to. It's the ideal. So if not everybody fulfills it, well, that's the way how life is. But ideally, you would fulfill it, especially if you're a job application candidate. Make sure punctuality is something you fulfill. Ehrlichkeit und Direktheit. Meaning, well, some of you may know, it is honesty and directness. That is a huge discussion point between direct versus indirect communication. Is honesty more important than, let's say, diplomacy? Is directness more important than politeness? Well, there are variations, there are nuances there, but in general, German culture does appreciate honesty and directness. And if you come from a culture or if you have a personal preference that is more towards diplomacy and indirect polite language and behavior. You may want to practice that, otherwise you get a little bit of a culture shock when you're there. Klarheit und Korrektheit. Clarity and correctness. So make sure when you express yourself, it's very clear, very direct, and make sure everything is correct. It's like you should know this, and you didn't portray it in the right way, and you might be accused of something like that. So make sure it's clear and correct. Competence. Yes, it means competence, but what is meant by that? It means that your qualifications, being a specialist, knowing things very well, being an expert in the field, taking it seriously with responsibility, that's something that is very important. So if you're not really an expert in something, or if you don't really know certain things, don't pretend you do. That's very, very important. And it goes along with Verantwortlichkeit, which could be translated as responsibility, but in a way also as accountability. So you need to show responsibility, and you will be held accountable for everything you say and do. Loyalität und Freundschaft. So that's very important in people's personal lives. It does spill into work, but usually Germans very keen on separating work from private life as much as possible. So that means loyalty and friendship. It may take you a while. Germany is more of a coconut culture, not so much of a peach culture. So building trust, building relationships and friendships may take a while. Hopefully not too long from your personal point of view, but you won't regret it, because loyalty and friendship is very, very important. It's just that the average German takes their time, and you'll have to prove yourself before they trust you. But once they do, you'll have a friend for life. That's kind of the general comparison, if you want. And Heimat und regionale Traditionen, also very important. Someone's hometown, or home region, where they're originally from, and their regional traditions. Most Germans do identify as a citizen of that particular city, or a resident of a particular region or state, more than being a German citizen. So that hometown, that home region, and the regional traditions there, and the local dialect and accents that distinguishes people from different regions, that is extremely important. And you paying special attention to that and noticing that, that is also very important and a huge value in the German culture. A few other tips and tricks, and just a list of things you might want to consider, is directness, definitely honesty before diplomacy. That also goes for negative feedback. So in some cultures, people are direct, very explicit, but then when you have negative, or let's say constructive feedback, you're a little more careful. You want to do some face saving. You want to use the famous feedback sandwich, go easy on people. Not in Germany. You can be very direct with everything. It's highly valued. It's considered honesty and integrity. It does not ruin business relationships or friendships. On the contrary, if you don't say things the way they are, it may actually be construed as you being untrustworthy. So direct and honest, show integrity, also for negative feedback. You might notice there's a lack of praise. So no news is good news. So if you did a good job, your boss in Germany will not tell you good job, well done on a daily basis. Your boss may actually say nothing. And you get scared, like, oh, did I make a mistake? Am I not doing my job right? I haven't heard a single word of praise yet. It probably means you're doing a good job. People are very quick with negative feedback. Oh, you made a mistake. They'll tell you immediately. But you did a good job? Well, maybe on occasion, if if it's the opportunity is there, but on a daily basis, really a lot of praise, like it's common in the United States. No, absolutely not. So don't be scared. You can always double check with your boss. Say, are you happy with the way I'm doing this? Can you give me some feedback? And then they will say, yeah, it's all good. You're doing a great job. Well, thanks for asking. And then you can be sure, but don't wait for them to give you praise on like a daily basis. That won't happen. Clarity. You really have to say what you mean and mean what you say. Very important. Formality. There's probably a lot of formality. Well, it depends on where you come from. You will always compare to your home country. Just observe and match the level of formality that is expected. There's also formality in the language. So as you start learning German, you will see that there are different forms of you. There's a formal you, an informal you, an impersonal you, a singular and a plural you, and so on. I also have a video about the first steps or the basics of learning German or learning a foreign language successfully in general. So check out those other videos if you're interested in learning German or in general, how to successfully learn a foreign language. But don't be surprised that there's more formality also in the language. And facts and credibility. Well, you really should focus on the facts. Like I said, don't make any unsubstantiated claims. You always need to have evidence, proof that this is true. This is how you build credibility. This is how people will trust you. Also bring a lot of patience. Decision making may take a while. They do a lot of fact checking. So don't get pushy. Don't be impatient. Just accept bureaucracy as is. You cannot speed up things. It's just a system. It's how it is. Just know the system, accept it the way it is. There are no ways how you can expedite procedures. Never offer any favors or bribes. I don't want to even call it that, but let's just say favors, but don't do it. Just trust the system as is. There are definitely no expedited services. Depth. Well, most conversations do go to a certain depth. It's actually highly valued if you are able and willing to have in-depth conversations. Well, depending on your language skills, you may not be able to do that at the beginning as you start learning German, and their English might not be good enough to go into the same level of depth as they communicate with you in English. But try to at least have some sort of in-depth conversation because these superficial statements is what is usually frowned upon. Work and private life are usually separated. There are connections between the two. Of course they are. And yes, you may meet your next best friend at work, of course. But what you do in your free time and for how long you work, that people really try to separate it as much as possible. Also, the work-life balance is essential. It's taken very seriously. There are actually laws to prevent you from working overtime, and if you do, it has to be paid out or you have to take it as extra time off. So your employer may actually be very insisting that you do not add on too many hours of overtime, or at least they will tell you how to handle it because it's a critical thing and people actually do insist on their work-life balance. And when you have free time is precious to Germans. You really need to take your time to get some rest, to travel, to spend time with your family and friends. And if the weather is good, which does happen quite a bit in the summer, then the outdoors are revered. So being outdoors is something you will see a lot. People really, really enjoy and appreciate it. Well, are you ready to apply for a job in Germany? Are you ready to move there or at least go and explore? Well, if you prepare, if you practice, then you'll succeed. If you're looking for a teacher, trainer, coach to help you with that, you know where to find me. You can find me online by looking for my name, Renate Urban, or my company name, Urban Training and Services. You can visit my website or you can connect with me on LinkedIn. So thank you very much for watching. I hope I could help you. I hope you got inspired to start looking. I hope you got inspired to go to those websites, check out what the situation is, what you might want to do. And if you have any questions, if you want to create a resume in German for Germany, or if you want to ask some specific questions, if you want to start learning German, or if you already do and you want to practice it, you want to practice an interview, you want to have a teacher trainer coach to help you prepare, please contact me and please come back to my YouTube channel. There are many other videos that deal with topics of intercultural communication, language learning, and these business skills and job search topics across cultures. You can also subscribe to my channel. You can click here. There should be something on the screen right here. Please subscribe to my channel, come back, watch my videos, and welcome to the community. Thank you, and have a great day.